Hey everyone, just wanted to show you some incredibly interesting information I came across recently in regards to the Urbano Monte flat map from 1587, um, and especially in regards to a lot of evidence and very interesting coincidences of how it ties into the Antarctica Treaty and how it highly suggests that the Antarctica Treaty could very much be close to 500 years, if not over 500 years old. So there's a lot of different information on this map. And this map is a very incredibly detailed map. It's actually, even by cartographer standards, it's very accurate for its time. Um, just with all the locations of the continents and the geography and the land sizes are pretty accurate. But there's a lot of detail on this, and this is actually a pretty large map. I think it's actually like 10 foot by 10 foot if I remember right. So it's very large, and there's a lot of detail. And we're going to go over a lot of these details that, for one, they're very almost identical to the Antarctica Treaty, but it suggests that the Antarctica Treaty goes back to even the 1500s. So, but one of the first things I want to point out here um, is that there's a chart um, towards the bottom here that actually lists a lot of the sailors and explorers and cartographers that were involved in creating this map. And it's like over 20 different, explorers and cartographers that were, involved in this expedition, exploring all the world and, you know, basically, getting all the information for the map. Now, there's one person in particular on this list that really piqued my interest, and there's a guy on here named Fernando Colombo. So obviously, we all know about Christopher Columbus and his voyages from the late 1400s into the early 1500s. Um, he also had a second son named Ferdinand Colombo. So I believe this could be, Christopher Columbus's like nephew. There's probably some kind of relation to Christopher Columbus because they're both Italian explorers and Italian cartographers with the same last name, and they're making maps. Now, with that context said, with Christopher Columbus, he when he was doing all these expeditions, he was funded by I want to say King John and Queen Isabella, and they funded all of his expeditions. He had to go back and report all of his findings and his maps to these kings and queens. And maps back then were very valuable, and so he would always come back and he'd report. He'd be funded by the royalty, and he'd have to report to them with his map information and wherever he navigated on his expeditions. So, with that being said, um, that would be the same situation with this map with, Urbano Monte and Ferdinand Colombo and all these other explorers. They would be funded by royalty, kings and queens, and they would be reporting back to them. So, and since we're on the same topic of kings and queens, I wanted to point out that there's several different. I actually want to say I think there's seven different kings that are placed throughout the perimeter, which would be considered like Antarctica, the coastline of Antarctica. They have these kings that are placed throughout. And I'm actually going to get into this here in a minute. Each one of these points represents a land claim from different countries and different royalties and different continents, basically, they all have their own stake in Antarctica. So But you'll notice there's these kings that are placed throughout. Like there's one, here's another one. Um, and each one of these kings are from different countries. And so there's two there. You'll see that they're basically all throughout. Here's another king here, and another one here. Here's another one, and that's another one. So right here, so there's these seven kings, these royalty that are all on the perimeter of Antarctica, what would be considered the Antarctica coastline. And this is going to come up with another thing that I discovered that's going to be, it's going to tie everything together. And you're going to see there's a lot of coincidences and pieces of the puzzle that once you look at it in the bigger picture, it just makes perfect sense. Um, so, so we've seen that they have all these kings and royalty that, are establishing these land claims. So another thing that I found that was very interesting is each one of these points that are around Antarctica represent a land claim, and I'll show you more detail on that. So most of this map is like written in Italian. I think some of it's written in Latin too, Spanish, but you can see here it says this one here says Della Spagna, which means for Spain. And then we can go to the next one. This is Della Francia, which is for France. And you can kind of just, you can keep seeing all these different lands. I think that's Finland, but there's another one here. This one says for Germania, which is this is for Germany. And, you can go all the way around this, and each one of them is like a major country and continent that all has these land claims around Antarctica. So that's, very interesting because that's very similar to the Antarctica Treaty that we have today. Every signatory has its own ownership and stake of land claim in Antarctica with all the different Antarctica base stations. And so there's all these different land claims even today by these different countries. Um, but again, that current Antarctica treaty we have was created back in, I want to say it was 1959. So, that's obviously, this is much older than that. Um, but with that being said, I think that the current Antarctica treaty um, was kind of like it was like a reification of the other Antarctica treaty that's been going on for hundreds of years. As a reification to the public, like, hey, we're telling you that you guys can't be exploring down beyond Antarctica. You can't be going on the land of Antarctica. So I think that's just kind of it's like a reissuing and a reification of the Antarctica treaty that's been around for hundreds of years. It's just kind of reinstating it to the public, and they have to do that so many years. It's like kind of like a renewal on the Antarctica Treaty. But so you can obviously there's these kings and all the way around Antarctica. There's all these different land claims for each continent and country around the entire coast of Antarctica, which is very similar to the treaty we have today. So with that being said, I also want to show you a couple things that point out how there's restrictions and that you can't visit here on the map. You can't visit Antarctica, which again sounds very familiar to the current Antarctica treaty we have. So there is a spot here. I want to say there's one. Sometimes it's hard to remember where some of this is at. I do have it screenshotted already, but I just wanted to find the location on the map. So there's this one here. Italian regulations of the map, and it's a lot of this, like I said, is in Italian, so I had to translate it. And so we'll just pull up a couple of these that I found on the map, and then we'll have these translated. So the first one that I found that was I thought was very interesting was this one here. I think this was actually in Spanish, but it's saying over here, and this is one of the regulations called out on the map. I saw this part at the end, grandissima pena y son idolatrous prohibido. So I thought that's part, like, it sounds like it's, you're prohibited, and there's, a great penalty is what I kind of read there. So I did, interpreted that, and it is saying it is prohibited by the law of their kings under great penalty, and they are idolaters. So this area of Antarctica, and this was on the Antarctica coast, is it's saying that it is prohibited by the law of your kings, and there's great penalty. Well, doesn't that sound exactly like the current Antarctica Treaty we have? If you try to go down beyond the 60th parallel and you get caught, there's obviously a great penalty for that. There's fines, there's jail time, and you could get jail time. I mean, there's a whole legal system set up, a whole legal infrastructure where, and obviously there's the Antarctica Treaty Handbook that points out all these restrictions that you can't violate. So essentially, yes, you can independently, or you can't independently explore Antarctica, but you can visit there to a very small area below South America on the Antarctic Peninsula on a guided tour, and um, you can't really deviate from the tour. They're all cruises, and they're all going to a designated area. Same thing with the South Pole expedition. You can pay 80 to 1,000, 80 to 100 grand, um, just to go to a South Pole expedition, but you can't deviate off of the guided path that you're on. So you have to follow a structured tour to the South Pole. Um, So, like, again, like, there's a whole legal infrastructure set in place um, on this map from, like, almost 500 years ago. It's very similar to the Antarctic Treaty. And then the second translation I wanted to point out was there's another one here that I found, which is also makes a lot of sense. So this here, this bottom one, when we translate that, it's saying that in this country, which it's on the Antarctica coast, so they're implying Antarctica, is not permitted that foreigners live. Alas and praises, they are very white and they are abandoned. Well, that kind of makes sense because when you think of Antarctica, it's covered in snow and ice, so it's very white, and it's obviously abandoned. Like, most of Antarctica, there's no housing there, there's no residential living areas there. There's a few bases here and there, but like 99% of Antarctica is abandoned, and it's not, livable there. So it's not permitted for foreigners and people to live there and visit there. And it's basically saying it's white because it's covered in snow and ice and it's abandoned. So I thought that was very interesting, made a lot of sense. So that's kind of like a lot of the stuff that I found um, that I thought was very interesting in the map. But then I also found something that was even more interesting that also ties into this map. So um, I found this other search engine, and I think I have mentioned this before, but I found this map from Yandex, which it's kind of like Google, but it's in Russian. So it's you'll see a lot of Russian stuff on there. You usually have to translate a lot of stuff, but I went to their like GPS maps from this like Russian Google basically, and found something that was pretty interesting. Um, we're gonna get in that here in just a second. And yeah, so when you zoom in, like I said, it looks somewhat similar to Google Maps, but you'll find out that it's not. So when we zoom in down to Antarctica, you're gonna find that you find a lot of different areas of the coast that are called out by kings and queens. They have like kings and queens land claims. Now, this isn't if you go to a regular Google Maps, you won't see this like on Google, but this is, like I said, this is in Russia, so they have a different. They didn't have the algorithm in Apocalypse of 2017 where they had all the mass censorship of flat earth and deleted a lot of that stuff and banned a lot of stuff and changed their algorithm so where you can't really search for flat earth stuff anymore. But this, this Yandex it never had that mass censorship. So like a lot of flat earth stuff that you look for, you can find if you do enough searching. But yeah, like I said, if you zoom in, you'll find these different royalty land claims. So here's one like King Edward land, and you'll find a whole bunch of them. And this is stuff that's not normally on our GPS maps. So here's Princess Martha Coast, Princess Astrid Coast, Princess Ragnarchild Coast, Princess Harold Coast, and then Prince Olav Coast, and you see all these different, Ingrid Christen Coast, and William II Coast, Queen Mary Coast. If you guys remember Queen Mary from the 1500s, they could have been, reporting back to her with a lot of this information on these maps. So it's interesting that you see all these royalty people, these kings and queens that are all have these land claims on the coast all over Antarctica, and yet we don't really have access to this information on our normal search platforms and our GPS platforms, but they have their own GPS platform and their own basically like search engine. So they're showing something different that we don't normally see. So I just thought that was really interesting that they're calling out all these royalty kings and queen land claims all around the coastline of Antarctica. Well, that's the same thing that we see on the map here with these kings and queens all around the coastline of Antarctica on the Urbano Monte map. So like if you look at like a Gleason map, you'd have all these different locations of these royalty kings and queens with all their land claims around the coast of Antarctica. So it's interesting that these all kind of line up with our GPS maps, the Urbano Monte maps. It lines up with the Antarctica Treaty. So it seems like this is something that has been in place for hundreds of years. And there's also other people that kind of discovered a lot of this stuff, and we're gonna actually show some of the other stuff that they kind of came across with this Antarctica Treaty on this Urbano Monte map. And you're going to see that, how a lot of this just kind of ties together, and it makes a lot of sense that this treaty has been around for a lot longer than we're told. So let's go ahead and look at some of the other information that other people have come across.
The Egyptian pyramids are also on the map, as well as the city of Cairo. Muscovy on this map is a ruined province, a river, and a lake. We observe that 12 kings are represented on the map of Urbano Monte. You have to think that they are the most influential nobles, the rulers who manage the destiny of the world. In America you can see recognizable and well-defined rivers, coastlines, not just coastal cities, but also cities in the interior of the continent. Lakes, mountain ranges, everything is there. What does that mean? That by then all this territory was explored, learned, mapped. It will be necessary to see what type of cities are these. And in North America, deep in Alaska, we find a mention of Tartary, summer training camp of the Tatars. It means that this territory had been studied, mapped, indicating mountains, rivers, forests, cities and the summer camp of the Tatars. A curious thing is that Acadia, a colony of New France in northeastern North America. It was founded in 1604 and the map dates from 17 years is a little difference. But this is only between the map creation dates and the founding date of Acadia. But, here's another interesting thing, see how America is represented on this map. Now let's compare it to a more modern atlas from 1742 by Guillaume de Lisle. "150 years earlier, Urbano's map shows it complete. The fact that 150 years before 1742, judging from these two maps, the territory of North America was known, and at least, it wasn't just a blank spot in the World Atlas. Something quite strange. Here's another thing, why is no one surprised by how Antarctica was depicted by the ancient cartographer? This is a full projection of the atlas. What do you see there in all those lands that? Are they unknown to us? Google Earth wanted to adapt the map to a digital globe and this was the result. But why did they make the world go round at this angle in the video? Why not show the North and South Poles? Perhaps because years later the South Pole would be represented like this. Precisely with nothing. Why hide those lands? And no one said anything about how the South Pole is represented on the map of Urbano Monte. But, there is a KMZ file for the Google Earth program, which can be downloaded. And you can see the projection of the atlas on the globe world also below. It seems that here the plane could no longer be adapted well to the balloon. What is in the upper right corner is probably Australia, but does not match. For nothing the Antarctica of Urbano Monte, nor the lands that are seen there, with the current spherical model. The funny thing is to see why Australia separated it from Antarctica on maps after this one. At the North Pole there are also differences with the one they show us today. This map also provides extended information about Japan, which was not found on other Western maps created at that time. Another mystery is that the map clearly provides details of the areas not yet discovered in 1587. But it all seems very strange and contradictory. On the one hand, it turns out that Monte was a brilliant geographer, and on the other, he did not know the rotation of the Earth around the Sun that they tell us officially, since a smaller sun is seen on the map, with its trajectory drawn around the Earth. It is also observed that the compass points to the North Pole on the plane of the Earth. Nor does it mean that this map is the absolute truth. It may fit the possibility whether it is false, like many other documents, or not, as it has a lot of accurate and interesting data. This map definitely has secrets and provides for much more analysis and study. Unfortunately, in order not to delve deeper into the map analysis, some say that Urbano Monte was a kind of fantasy cartographer. But how do you explain that, at that time, in the 16th century, someone ordinary like Urbano Monte could map all of America, less than 95 years after Columbus discovered it, and have the entire world atlas drawn correctly and fairly detailed ready? Making a map of the world with such characteristics and that precision is very difficult. Taking into account that in those days there were supposedly no planes, no positioning system, neither telecommunications, nor the technology we know today. Nothing with which a map of that magnitude could be created, according to what we have been officially told. So how did the ancient cartographer manage to create a map so detailed that it is still you can superimpose on the world and get a surprising match of the data? How many million surveyors is to create this map? What complicated surveying equipment did they use? Did they have more advanced tools than you think existed? There would have to be a level of technological capabilities at that time to be able to do this great job, since we are talking about a complete map of the world. So this map could cast doubt on the official version of the story. But as usual, our scientists will probably say that this is a mystery from the past.
And this map we all know about. It's one of my favorite maps. Kevin also knows. We all know it's Monte Urbano map. And this is the map which is the whole topic all about. Is Antarctica Treaty 500 years old? Why? Why could it be possible? Okay, the next image is, as I said, sometimes the information could be right in front of our face, but we won't see it. Sometimes it's there, but only when the time comes for it to know, you will really see it. All this information here, where the arrows are pointing to the extra lands, there are some letters written here. It's written, I think it is in Italian. Okay, so we continue. Okay, what do we see here? We see de la España. This means from Spain. This is de la Francia, from France. De la Germania, the Germany claiming like that. So this all goes around and is claimed by different countries and divided in
how many of
parts.
that?
Right, their own sector.
They're all, yeah.
The Masonic division. The Masonic division, in other words, of Antarctica. There you go.
There's probably 33 of them there.
So
there you go.
So if this map is more than 500 years old, if this map is more than 500 years old, and this is already divided 500 years before, so how can be the Antarctica Treaty from past 60 or 80 years, 60 years ago? How is it possible?
Yeah, this is in water. There you go. This is a valid question. If this map goes back that far, what's this Antarctica Treaty all about? Looks like it's already there anyway.
Exactly. This is what I'm trying to get. That this is just a mock-up. This treaty is just a mock-up to show maybe they had some internal, like maybe they just got hot and they started fighting again, so they may have to make a new one. What I think so. During the Cold War, during the First World War, yeah. So maybe that was the whole fuss about.
Yep, re-solidify it to the public, in other words.
Exactly. So here it's...
By the way, guys, they did those operations down there. If you look up the word Dominic in the anywhere, it refers to the Lord. So Dominic and Fishbowl were in Antarctica, and it sounds like Fishbowl of the Lord. Kind of interesting.
Of course, yep. By the name itself, yes.
And those are the little things all over the place. Those little Easter eggs, whatever.
Easter eggs.
Those are things we have to all overlook constantly. Constantly overlook these things to write it off and not say, hey, what is really going on? So
right, the little Easter eggs hidden in plain sight. That's what Vika was talking about earlier.
right.
There it is in front of everybody,
Yeah.
and nobody recognizes it because we're not taught to recognize it, but we don't recognize it for ourselves.
Right.
But then again, somebody has the epiphany and shares it with everybody. That's why we're all here doing this talking, because we're seeking more. Finally.
And here, Rob, and here it says, maybe you can read it already in Spanish, but here is for the people who don't understand. There are some information also in some parts. No, here it's written in Italian. In the
Los
same
habitantes
map,
de este país no. Okay.
No quiere comercio
It got
con
small on me. There we go.
forasteros.
No quiere.
Okay. Comercio con forasteros.
They don't.
Quiere su amistad.
It looks like forasteros. Does that mean foreigners? That's what it looks like. They don't want commercial. They don't want commerce from foreigners, and they don't want friendship. Yeah. And it's prohibited by law, by their kings, by big penalty, and they are idolatrous, meaning they're pagans.
But that's information about that part of people of that particular region. Okay, so there are different information is given about.
So there it is. It says bajo grandísima pena, means there's huge penalty for going there. There you go. That's the treaty, Antarctica Treaty, right there.
Even back then.
Yep, and here he's saying, en este país no está permitido que los extranjeros viven ahí, y todos son muy blancos y están desnudos. He's saying that in this country it's not permitted the foreigners living there, and everyone here is very white and are naked. In that part,
really,
it means it's warm.
It's not cold.
It's not cold.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. If they're running around without coats on, then it's warmer than Utah.
So okay, we're gonna
see the Iceman Wim Hof.
We're gonna be continuing this. One moment,
this is fabulous.
I'm gonna stop sharing screen. All right, so we're gonna take a short break, and we're gonna come back, and we're gonna just continue a bit more and to try to conclude everything, because there's still a bit of things left. All right, guys. So if you want to add something before we take a break, anyone?
This is really awesome what you did here, Vika. It's a beautiful job.
Same here.
I love these maps. Are fantastic. Thank you.
If you go to Wikipedia, and here it says international conflict. Okay, various international conflicts motivated the creation of an agreement for the Antarctica. After the Second World War, the U.S. considered establishing a claim in Antarctica from August 26, 1946, and until the beginning of 1947, Operation High Jump was carried out, the largest military expeditionary force that the United States has sent to Antarctica to the present, consisting of 13 ships, 4,700 men, and numerous aerial devices. Its goal was to train military personnel and test material in condition of extreme cold for a hypothetical war in Antarctica. What hypothetical? These people were literally like almost fighting with Argentina and Chile. Here it goes. Some incident had occurred during the World War II, and the new occurred in Hope Bay on February. The Argentinian military fired warning shots at the group of Britons. The response to the UK was to send a warship that landed Marines at the scene on February in 1949. Argentina, Chile, and United Kingdom signed a tripartite naval declaration committing not to send warships south to the 60th parallel, which was renewed annually 1961 when it was deemed unnecessary when the treaty entered into force. The tripartite declaration was signed after the tension generated when Argentina sent a fleet of 8 warships to Antarctica in February 1948. So what the hell was happening in Antarctica? Why was Admiral Byrd there? What, to fight a war against the Chilean Argentinians?
That's super suspicious.
Never heard of that before.
This is there on Wikipedia.
That's from
right
Wikipedia.
There.
Yeah, that's crazy. I don't remember ever hearing him mention a war down there.
So the other thing what I was saying before is really matches to this, and there was conflict was going on. There was again here on more faithful, the United Kingdom filed 2 lawsuits against Argentina and Chile, respectively, for the International Court of Justice, which is UN in short terms, to declare the invalidity of the claims of the sovereignty of the 2 countries over Antarctica and sub-Antarctica areas. Only July 15, 1958, the Chilean government rejected the jurisdiction of the court in that case. On the August, the Argentine government also did so. Blah blah blah. Okay, so it's the same here. The international geophysical here, same. The conflict. It's all there. They actually what happened, as we were speaking about before, is the same thing. They had to redo it again because there were 12 main countries, and there were some officially claiming claims, and some wanted the other part. So it was actually really about the extra lands. And the best part, okay, here it says the signing of the treaty was the first armed control agreement that occurred in the framework of the Cold War. Oh, very interesting. Everything happening all in the same time. You see, all these are countries are involved, but there are only 12 main countries who really like run the show, and the most important being Argentina and Chile for sure, and there's Australia also, because it's one of the most it claims, that it's near there. And you have Chile, you have Brazil unofficial, France,
right? Location
and Germany. Yeah, Germany is because we read that Germania, it was written in Italian, but it even mentioned when East and West Germany became one, and it went as Germany. And here's historical claim.
What about China?
China, they're all new part. Maybe they're just there, like they don't have really a word maybe in it. You see, here is the Germany, New Swabi.
I'm just curious. It sounds, it sounds like the biggest armies have claim down there. The biggest countries with the biggest armies. Is that right? No.
Yeah, and the most near, for example, Japan.
Right, the location and the army size dictates what this list is right now.
Exactly, and everybody's involved up to some part, but they don't have the word. They don't have so much power apart from these ones who really claim. Japan, historical claim.
Yeah, right.
Why? Because they here they are claiming. They claim that part of Antarctica is because they did an expedition in 1910, much more before.
Okay.
And like in the ship Kalian Maru was the first such expedition by a non-European nation. It was concurrent with 2 major Antarctic individuals led by respectively blah blah blah. So the same thing. Norway claims
nothing with the Vikings though. Oh, there you go. Norway, maybe.
Yeah, Norway. Okay. Yeah,
we said the same thing, same time almost.
South Africa, UK for sure, because it's all about colonizing. And so here we have it, people. There is no there is no doubt, that why. That's why I was mentioning before that in the Antarctica Treaty there are countries who are claiming the ownership, and that's why it was all these conflicts before, because there was
okay.
Okay.
Oh, Pika, you know what that does? In 1958, well, really 1961, when they signed it, you know what that did? That removed all of the deeds that all these other countries had. Nobody owns any of it now.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. Exactly. That is huge. That's bigger than big. That's monumental. But you know what? Nobody has claim to it, but you know what? They probably got a percentage. How about that? They don't have a claim to it, but they got a percentage. How about that?
check
because
this.
that's the
I
new
was
world order,
I'm
right?
just gonna show. I'm just gonna show it again a little bit. You see that there are all these countries who are involved, but out of these, there are 12 countries who claim, like Argentina, who's very near Australia. These are the oldest people who really claim the Antarctica because they are near the border. The France, the Germany, the historical claim, as I said before. These are
Right,
not
right,
there.
right, right, right.
Japan,
Yeah,
Japan claims these are historical because they did their expedition in 1910. So there are different. Norway because of the Viking, how Ginny said. South Africa,
okay.
United Kingdom, UK. So there are these countries who are really the ones who run the show about this treaty, who used to run, and all the names that we mentioned before from the Urbano Monte. So all these ancient ones whose names were there, they ones really run the show. So all these rest of the people are just there, like collaborating for the sake of humanity. They don't
Yeah.
have no
Right.
word. They don't have any word in there. If really something go bad again about this treaty, these are the 12 countries who are gonna really make the moves. So this whole idea of Antarctica and the whole show that what we did, we read the Antarctica Treaty, the first, when it happened and everything. We saw all the maps with most of them showing the extra lands, and these are all ancient maps, and also Urbano Monte. Then we saw the names of the countries being so all the maps, So, and then we saw again the Antarctica Treaty, and also some things I mentioned about, and the war, what happened, and what is being said in Wikipedia about this war. So all this conflict and all the disinformation is there. So it's right there, guys. It's for the people to ponder and make up their own mind. You could bring truth the way you could. My English is not the most perfect, but yeah, in a way we try to communicate, and the people could do their own research from here on about this subject. But we did can see it very clearly. What is the reason why they don't let people go Antarctica, and why this has been happening, and why the globe came into existence. So I
Yeah,
hope
there
you
you go.
guys really enjoyed it, and we're gonna have some last thoughts on this, and we're gonna be wrapping up, guys. It's almost.
As you can see, we've covered a lot of information today on the Urbano Monte flat map from 1587 and how it somehow ties into the Antarctica Treaty in more ways than one. There's a lot of different details and a lot of interesting coincidences, whether it's the different land claims called out by different countries and continents, different kings and members of royalty called out on not just the Urbano Monte map, but also the Russian navigation map that we found online, um, to the different wars and conflicts that happened shortly after World War One that suggest that they were reclaiming previous already old land claims from the current Antarctica Treaty that's already been in place for potentially hundreds of years. When we look at all these different coincidences, it seems like there's a lot more going on with Antarctica than what we're being told about. Sometimes I feel that reality is not even close to what we're told it is, and that our actual reality is far more than anything we could ever possibly imagine.